Hey, welcome to the To the Contrary podcast. I am Charlie Sykes, joined by my good friend Paul Rieckhoff, the founder of Independent Vets of America. Good to have you back, Paul.
My pleasure, Charlie. Happy Monday or happy new week. I don't know, man.
Okay. So, I mean, there's so many places to start. Let me just start with a little bit of a rant on a subject that I never actually want to talk about. I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time, and one of my iron laws
baseball playoffs. Can we talk about baseball playoffs? That would be fun.
I would much prefer to do that. I actually was more grim note, just the mass shootings.
Yeah.
But the baseball playoffs, I wouldn't mind getting to that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, here are the numbers. There have been 381 mass shootings so far in 2025. 381. Since January 1st of 2013, there have been 6,913 mass shootings in this country. What the actual fuck, America? I mean, really, and we're going to go into the same old doom loop, same old shit, thoughts and prayers, finger pointing, debate, inertia, and absolutely nothing. And it feels that it's getting worse, not in the sense, I mean, yes, it's getting worse in the sense of the volume of the mass shooting, but the utter cynicism and the demagoguery. Everybody reacts by figuring, can I score points on this? Can I blame the other guy for this? Is there some political upside for me to exploit these dead, innocent people? So I'm sorry, that's just my rant. If you want to respond, you can. I'm just going to throw it up against the wall.
I actually do. That's like the opposite of fun playoff baseball. But I do think it's actually one of the most important issues in America that's not getting enough attention. The Pentagon has identified domestic extremism and domestic violence as one of our top national security threats for years. But there's a deeper story that I've been unpacking in some interviews and some conversations. We have a lot of very angry, very isolated, very lonely men with guns. Yeah. And that is a very dangerous recipe for a society. And it's something that Richard Reeves has written about. I've talked to Scott Galloway. Now governors like my friend Wes Moore and others are tackling this. But we've got to address the fact that we have a lot of very angry, isolated, disproportionately white men who feel disconnected from community, who are often radicalized. And that's not to say they are always the shooter, but we have a laboratory that's basically breeding shooters, right? And giving them access to guns, and they're being, amplified and intensified by the political rhetoric from the president most of all. And it has our enemies celebrating. So I think it's maybe one of the most important issues in our society. And I think Democrats especially don't know how to get at it, and Republicans maybe don't want to approach it. But we got a lot of men, especially in their 20s, who are very isolated, who are not dating, who are in mom's basement playing Call of Duty, watching crazy shit online, and have access to guns. That's a major problem for America right now.
It used to be that we had the cliche, it's a mental health issue. And yet I'm increasingly beginning to think that if you're above a certain age, you have no idea the world that these young men are inhabiting, the memes, the narratives, what's going on in their world. They are so isolated from mainstream society that it's hard to, even if you read what they have been writing, to be able to translate it, the various layers of, I don't even know what to call it anymore. And so it feels like it's getting further and further away from us, that rather than moving toward a solution or moving towards some sort of an intelligent understanding of this, that it's becoming more and more bizarre for the reasons that you mentioned. The spiral is.
Can I build on that and something that's really timely too? Okay, the Ryder Cup this weekend. If you didn't watch the golf Ryder Cup, okay, many have said this is like the manifestation of Trump's America, where the fans were rude, they were nasty, they were cursing, they were throwing stuff at the foreigners, right, including Rory McIlroy and these amazing golfers from Europe, harassing Rory McIlroy's wife. It was on full display. But I got to tell you, like, as a guy who coaches youth sports, I have two boys who are 10 and 6. You have to look at the environment that these kids are growing up in and understand that that's partially true here. I mean, they look up every day and they see a commander-in-chief who's supposed to be the role model for America saying, I hate my enemies, like this dunking on people, the nastiness, the vitriol, the overall atmosphere is contagious. And the word that I would put on it, Charlie, is one that I got from my friend and frequent guest on my show. He's on my show this week, Ken Burns, the great Ken Burns.
Yeah.
And he calls it grievance, right? And talks about how Trump is able to manipulate grievance. And these are many young white men who feel like the country has left them behind, or they didn't get the dream that they were promised on The Apprentice. So they watch UFC and they want to be UFC fighters, and they love Dana White, and they all think maybe I'm going to be a billionaire. And they get swept up in some of the Charlie Kirk atmosphere and the Trump atmosphere, but it's a lot of cosplay. And it's almost like it's the opposite of World War II, where you had so many people who had served and sacrificed and been together, and they had to be creative and ingenious. Now you've got extremely isolated people who have not served in the military, haven't had a common experience, and their common experience is like video games or UFC. And it's really created a demented environment that I think we have to address, is producing these kinds of violent extremists, right? At a level that we don't see anywhere else in the world, in the same way we're producing school shooting. And we have to have a conversation about young men, fatherhood, community responsibility, the off-ramps they have for their anger or their frustration at a time when churches are down, political affiliations are down, sports participation is down, military service is down. This is a very dangerous cauldron that we have in this country that Trump is often manipulating. And also, even worse, extremists are manipulating. It's extremists on the left and it's extremists on the right, but this is a perfect breeding ground for the Proud Boys and for plenty of other extremist groups that want to access those young men.
You know, it's interesting, since we're going down the particular road. You know, it used to be that people said, you know, politics is downstream from culture. What we're also finding out is the culture is downstream from politics. And this is something that I remember writing about, I think back in 2016, is like, you know, what kind of a role model is Donald Trump for young people? Because, you know, my kids grew up in youth sports, and youth sports used to be this kind of oasis of sportsmanship and learning how to deal with respect, learning how to deal with success and with failure. And it was just ingrained in it. And then you have this new culture where, as you point out, dunking, you know, insulting, the kind of, you know, trash talk that's become, you know, just it's become omnipresent in youth culture, in this male culture. And so it doesn't always show up in acts of violence or mass shooting, but you see it all the time, the way that we deal with one another. And boy, I remember back in the 1990s, conservatives used to be absolutely obsessed with the question of what messages X, Y, or Z send to the young people. What are we showing young people? So this whole idea of the culture influencing the young, people who like were the president of the United States influencing us, why character matters. Remember, are you old enough to remember when conservatives said character matters? And all of those things?
Yeah.
And so now you see, you know, what do young people see? And the other thing that really it's hard to get my head around is I know people who are youth coaches who expect a certain level of honesty, integrity, sportsmanship in their daily lives, and yet when they go off into politics, they will support a Donald Trump, or they will support people who engage in this kind of behavior, and it's like a disconnect. You would never tolerate.
It's really important
in your own
Charlie.
life.
I really recommend that anybody coach youth sports at some point in your life. I think it's almost more important than military service. And I coach this season, I coach soccer and I coach flag football. And there's an insight that I want to share with people. Teachers probably know this, coaches know this. Let me give you an insight into what's really hard right now. Getting kids to focus in the huddle, okay? Getting them to look at me, to listen to what I'm saying, to process the information that's coming out of my mouth, and then go execute on a 5-man football field, okay? And I'm coaching kids that are 6 all the way up to like 11, okay? And at that age group, I'm in the huddle. I'm the coach. So I sit there and I show them the play, and I say, okay, everybody, let's get in the huddle. Here's the play. Getting them to look at me and focus on the play that I've written out and I'm showing them. And then at the end of the huddle, you get, okay, guys, ready? Break. Getting them united in an actual, in real life form, not in a video game. Then they have to walk up to the line. And what's really important about football, I think, is discipline, right? Teamwork, discipline, where you got to get 5 guys in this case, or 11 guys, and now girls, because girls are playing flag football too. Get them on the same page, united and executing. But the insight that I know teachers see is kids don't look at you. They don't look at each other. They're off out here and they're not locked in. And part of what I am really proud of is getting them to focus, getting them to work together, getting them to respect each other, getting them, frankly, just to shut up in the huddle for 30 seconds, because we only have 30 seconds. And I want to be quarterback, and I think that play sucks, and I should do this. I'm like, guys, you got 30 seconds. If you all talk, we don't get the play out, we get a penalty. And that's kind of America right now, where everybody's talking. And there's no control over the narrative. There's no respectful atmosphere. And I grew up reading John McCain's bio. I grew up reading about Colin Powell. I grew up reading about these pillars of our community that were often veterans, but not exclusively, that were people I wanted to be like. I joined the military in part because I read John McCain's book.
So what is the not making eye contact about? What is
They're
that?
They're not used to social interaction in real life. They are
real
on
people.
devices so often. They are on devices so often that it's really hard to hold their attention. It's really hard for them to have the discipline to focus. Sometimes they're uncomfortable because they're not used to adults actually looking at them and talking at them. They're not used to being in groups together, right? And it's especially important when they're young, because they're not regimented. They haven't been playing football for 10 years. But I find the same thing in soccer, in Little League. I coach basketball. Like, especially at that young age, getting them to focus on like basic social interactions where you just respect the person who's speaking, right, is really tough. And I think that's a reflection of our environment. And Trump's not saying, hey, kids, don't interrupt your teachers. Hey, kids, let the person have the floor. He's saying, scream over them, yell. If you don't like them, fuck them, right? Like, that's the atmosphere that these young boys especially are being taught. They think that's what right looks like. And I know we're going to talk about Hegseth. He's a great example, too. He's the anti-example.
Well, this is not all about Trump. This feels actually, as I'm listening to you, this feels bigger than Trump. I mean, it feels like we are creating an entire society of unsocialized males who can't make eye contact, because what you're describing, and whether it's video games or whether it's the phone or whether it's just, the fact that we are so isolated from one another. Where do you get empathy? Where do you get that social connection? Right. Where do you get to see other people as human beings, as real? And so then you wonder how it plays out. Look, 99.999% of those kids are not going to be shooters. And yet it's going to affect their interaction with other people the rest of their lives. It's going to have interaction. It's going to affect schools. It's going to affect businesses. It's going to affect absolutely everything. And so someone
can I share one more point that I think?
Yeah, right.
The other part, the kids are almost easy. What's really hard is the parents. And there's this great guy. I recommend everybody follow this guy on Instagram called Coach Ballgame. He's a baseball coach that works with Major League Baseball. He's a brilliant coach, youth coach. And he talks about how most Little League games become adult yelling parties. Right? This is a 6-year-old. He's up to bat, and I'm the coach. What I do when I'm coaching a 6-year-old is I stand behind them and I quietly whisper. And I say, listen to my voice and my voice alone. Okay? Step into the batter's box. Okay? You've been practicing. And while I'm doing that, swing the bat, hit a homer. What are you doing? You should do this. Come on. Like, it's an assault on them. And then throughout the play, every sport, the mom's yelling, the dad's yelling, other dads are yelling, and these kids are just like hearing it from all sides, and the parents don't respect. I literally have to turn and say, parents, I'm the coach. I got this, right? And that is what's coming at them. So I think if you want an insight, and then sometimes, look, it's great, and there's great programs, and there's many great coaches. I give coaches so much credit, but I think exploring what it means to be a leader, what it means to be a young man, what it means to be a leader in your community is really, really important. And coaches in my world are heroes. Teachers, people in the clergy, we need to elevate these people because our president is the opposite of that. And this is where the Democrats are struggling. Like, who are their role models, right? I don't know who they are right now, but they need to elevate them more so they can say, this is our example of what right looks like, not just as a politician, but as an American, as a human.
Well, if it's the parents too, then I think we need to get our heads around the fact that there's an entire generation of people growing up in this environment who think this is normal, that this is acceptable. See, you and I, we see, some of this cosplaying playing out here, or this, vulgarity, and we go, what the hell? Why is someone allowed to get away with this? you have an entire generation or more growing up thinking, well, yeah, that's what we expect, right? That's the way people behave. If I want to be accepted, if I want to be a tough guy, I have to, I have to run my mouth like
Look,
that.
let
I
me
have to
peel the
look
onion back on a level that this country is uncomfortable with. Most of the parents haven't served in the military. Most of the parents didn't have that connective tissue. We vets, like I'm going to put, we know the other vets. You can see them, their kids, they act different. There's just a different ability to click into a system where we're all working together. Now, of course, there are outliers. There are a lot of great parents, but we have to recognize that this is an entire generation of American parents who have not had any shared sacrifice. After 9/11, they went to the mall and they watched it on TV. So you got to go back to even Vietnam generation where they had some connective tissue. American Legion baseball used to be like a pillar of American culture, right? And that was a way for veterans to come back and serve their communities and share their lessons learned and be productive. But it's been a long time since we had a culture of people who understood what it's like to sacrifice and work together.
Jesus. All right. So you mentioned Pete Hegseth. Let's just make this a segue into this. What do you, I mean, the fact that Pete Hegseth would be considered like even remotely qualified to be the Secretary of Defense, leaving that aside, what's going to happen at this meeting of the generals and the admirals? What do you make of that?
So right before we hit record, there's a great media company site called Duffel Blog. Okay. It's like, it's the military's version of the Onion, right? It's satire. And they posted a headline that says, new master strategist Pete Hegseth to gather all military leaders in the same place at the same time. Right?
What could go wrong?
I think that this meeting is just the most glaring example of how he is extremely effective as a culture warrior. His focus is the culture war on behalf of Trump and this movement and gaining the power. And that's what all this is about. People say that you and I are on MSNBC a lot, right? And I think they lose the plot sometimes. What is this about? Is it a distraction from the Epstein? It's always about one thing, power. Consolidating power and growing their power base. So what's a really powerful thing to do? Make every military leader come to one place and listen to your bullshit. Right. And that maybe it's some kind of secret plan on how to fight the Russians or deal with some other national security threat.
Very unlikely.
Most likely, and early reporting says it's going to be some kind of like culture war pep rally. I mean, maybe it's going to be a blood oath. I mean, we don't know what it's going to be, but it's very political and it's not respectful of all these generals who have to come in, 800 of them or more from all around the world, leave their posts on 3 days' notice to come to something that's TBD, right? With the Secretary of Defense, who's been doing nothing but overtly political shit for the last 9 months. And now the president's going to stop by. Here's what I compare it to, Charlie. Do you know where the president was on 9/11? Do you know? He was at Yankee Stadium. You know why? Because they knew that he would get a great photo op with Aaron Judge and the Yankees, and nobody will boo him on 9/11. Because it's 9/11. He's the president, right?
Yeah,
so set it up for success. He's going to go meet the most amazing baseball player, the iconic brand. It's great TV, great pageantry. This is like that, right? Let's get all the generals in one room, show how Trump is powerful, and maybe even exercise that power and say, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, this will happen. But this is maybe the most frightening. I think it's the most frightening.
Right. I agree.
Flexing of their power. Right. They're saying, all of you come in here. You're the most respected in our country. You're the ones handling the guns. I'm going to show you all how I'm in charge. Right. And that's really what this is about.
So this is the question that I wanted to ask you, because I agree. I agree with you about all that. So let's say there's about 800 generals, admirals in the room. So what if they go around and what if it is the blood oath thing saying, we want to know how many people in this room are prepared to follow any order from the commander in chief. How many of you here, raise your hands, if you are willing to follow any order that Donald J. Trump gives you? How many hands go up? Knowing that if you raise your hand, you keep your job. You don't raise your hand, you're probably out. What do you think?
But here's the genius and the effectiveness that must be respected of what they do. This probably isn't going to be live, right? They're going to have it closed. No press is going to be allowed. They're going to flex security reasons why. And then what you get is a beautiful content opportunity, right? Where you have your camera stage. Let's say everybody in the room raises their hand. Let's say nobody in the room raises their hand. Whatever comes out of this room will be good for Hegseth and good for Trump because it's being staged for content manipulation and content gathering, even if it's just all the generals go in. They didn't get anything good inside. Maybe the meeting went sideways. You still have the image that you release of Hegseth waving to them when they all come in, or Trump saluting them when they all go out. They're setting themselves up for success. And that's what I think the Democrats especially are failing to understand. They are driving the narrative. They are driving the imagery. And they're showing to the world, look at how powerful and in charge Trump is. And, of course, the Democrats are almost irrelevant. They're like a speed bump. They're going to want to be invited. They're going to whine from outside. And they're not going to stop it. Even more importantly, Charlie, they're not going to stop the deployment of active duty troops to the newest city, Portland. Right. This is, I think, the most important story, which is that Trump has complete and total power over the most powerful military the world has ever seen. He can do whatever he wants, and nothing is stopping him. He can get them all in one room. He can bomb Iran. He can send them into Portland. He can blow up ships outside of Venezuela. And the Democrats and Republicans haven't been able to stop a single thing in 9 months. That is what everyone should be focused on above all else. Because take it to a further conclusion. If he wants to bomb Mexico, if he wants to fire a nuke strike, if he wants to fire all the generals, the question you should ask is, what's stopping him? And nothing. The unfortunate reality is nothing.
Well, can you blame the Democrats for that? I mean, he is the commander-in-chief. We've never had a commander-in-chief, quite this erratic or authoritarian, but and I want to talk about the Democrats and what they're doing and what they're not doing. But in this particular case, there are very few things that they could do other than find some way to defund many of the things he's doing, but they don't have the vote. So what do you think?
So I don't ever want to say I blame the Democrats, but the Democrats are always responsible, right? They are responsible for their own role on this political battlefield, right? And they are responsible for whether or not they choose to focus on the invasion of Portland or shutting down the government, right? Like, leadership is about priorities and about, I think, about a message, and they don't have a message. They don't have a clear leader. They don't have discipline, and they don't even have the ability to focus on the target. So let's say they decide they want to shut the government down. I think that would be a fool's errand for them, because I don't think they're going to be able to pull it off. Like, the Democrats are like the New York Jets of politics. They fuck up everything. So they do have to try to pick winnable fights and the most important fights. And I think the expansion of the military, for example, saying we want to rein in the power of the president, that is a good priority. That is a potentially winnable fight. That's something conservatives like Rand Paul and others at least will support. Some moderate conservatives might support. When he bombed Iran and never consulted Congress and never provided an update, there were some Republicans who said, yeah, that's kind of fucked up. We might be with you on that. But they couldn't keep the focus. They bounced on to something else. So I think the Democrats are responsible. If they want to take it to that extreme and say, yes, we're going to defund the 82nd Airborne because you're sending them into Portland, right? Or we want to defund an aspect of the National Guard. I think there are options on the table. But even more importantly, the one thing they could do is focus. Just focus and pick like 3 leaders who are going to be your leaders, who aren't Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, who are going to get the shit kicked out of them, right? It's like watching them send the weakest fighter into the ring over and over again, and they keep losing, saying, oh, but we're losing. Well, there are other fighters on the bench. There are people like Wes Moore, who I use as an example, right? Who I think has been uniquely effective, for example, in challenging Trump on some of the national security stuff, right? He's a better fighter on this than Gavin Newsom. So I can always criticize the Democrats. I'm not counting on them to save us. I am willing to call accountability on everybody. Of course, the moderate Republicans especially. Yeah, well, but when democracy is under attack like this, I think anybody in elected office has a responsibility to answer the call and try to slow it down.
Okay, so we're about to have a government shutdown. I mean, it's going to happen, within hours. And so the Democrats are going to have to figure out whether they're able to message this, whether they're able to win this. I mean, obviously, they can say, look, Donald Trump, you control all 3 branches. You control the presidency, the House, and the Senate. This is your job to keep the lights on. We didn't shut the government down. You're not able to keep it up. Do they have any alternative to shut it down? And, well, just give me a sense, because I see you have used the word failocrat.
Yeah, it's good, right? I think that's what we should call them, the failocrats, because this is not a judgment. This is a judgment of one thing: results, right? The scoreboard matters, right? What have the Democrats won on in 9 months? Right?
Well,
Like
they don't have the
they haven't
votes,
stopped a
right?
single
But they don't
nomination.
have.
They
But
haven't
they don't
stopped a
have the
single
votes,
cabinet
right?
nomination, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody from Cash Patel to Kennedy to Hegseth, they're just rolling them on everything. And to your question of like, do they want to shut the government down? So before they decide to shut the government down, what they should say is, okay, who's going to be our messenger? Chuck Schumer, who half the Democratic Party doesn't even support. And let's also decide, should they pick that fight? Because polling says 43% of Democrats don't want to shut the government down. Right? So they don't even have their own base. This is where they get ahead of their skis. And I think they get themselves set up to get destroyed. So you got Hakeem Jeffries and maybe, I don't know, Klobuchar and maybe Gavin Newsom. And they're all going to get rolled because whether or not Trump has all three levers of government, Trump has the narrative. Trump has the microphone. And he's going to make the Democrats look weak. He's going to make them look like they're the problem. He's going to roll them over and put the full court press on them. And the Democrats, the end result here is going to be, whether the government shuts down or not, Democrats are going to look worse. Trump's going to look stronger. And overall Democratic brand popularity.
So what should they do? What should they do? I don't think they have any alternative other than, given what Trump is doing, you cannot vote to fund Donald Trump's government right now. My question is, and I have a real problem with this, is once you do that, what is your exit strategy? What is the end game here? And I'm not sure.
Do they think
that there's a good one?
Let's keep this in mind, right? Here's what you're doing. You're giving Donald Trump a layup. He wants to shut down the government. He doesn't believe in government. He thinks government's a failure to begin with, right? He wants to rip it all across. He put Doge in place to dismantle it. And now the Democrats saying, hey, we're going to threaten you with a shutdown. Right? And here's the key thing about Republicans. When Republicans do a shutdown, you know this, Charlie, what do they have? They have unity. They're all locked in. And Democrats do not have the unity to hold the line on the shutdown. So before the shutdown even happens, Democrats are going to start splintering. And what's Mikey Sherrill going to say in New Jersey? She's in favor of a shutdown when she's running for governor and she's running neck and neck. So I think to really put a point on this, I don't think they should pick this fight. I don't think they can win this fight. And I think they should move on to fights they can win, like Epstein. I think they should pick their spots on fights they can win, like Trump totally taking over the military. I think they can win on fights like Kennedy, who has tremendously low approval ratings and everybody thinks he's a lunatic, right? Those are winnable fights. And somebody in the Democratic Party has to help them prioritize. And this is one thing the Democrats haven't done that I keep talking about. Pull everybody off the bench. Where is Barack Obama? Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, whether you like them or not, they're arguably two of the most effective communicators of our generation. Pull in Bill Clinton, pull in everybody you can who knows how to communicate.
Maybe more problematic these days.
Maybe, but maybe not, because here's what they're good at, right? Here's what I would propose. I've been saying this for a while, Charlie. Every day, Barack Obama does an address to the world on behalf of America, right? That's what Gavin Newsom did for like a week. And then he stopped doing it for whatever reason, right? Every morning, you got Donald Trump over here. And what did Barack Obama say? Here it is. You now have a contrasting narrative every single day. And he's the best example, I think, right? I don't expect George Bush to come off the sidelines. I don't expect others. But I use that as an example because it's how far behind the Democrats are, right? And it's their best warrior to put in the ring right now until somebody else rises up to contrast the daily narrative that is Trump. So that's one thing they can do. And if it's not going to be Trump, if it's not going to be Obama, pick a Democrat of the day, right? And do a daily message on behalf of the opposition as to what it is you think the world, and not just America, the world needs to hear, so you can at least show the world that we're all not crazy. That would be nice.
That would be helpful. You know, one of the paradoxes of what Trump is doing right now, and I'm not sure whether this is an opening for Democrats or not, is he really is. There's no subtlety, there's no mystery, there's no hiding what he's doing. That that he's going to order the Department of Justice to go out and charge his political enemies. I mean, Richard Nixon might have had an enemies list, but you had to have a secret tape to find out about it. Trump is like saying, "Fuck it, I'm just going to put on a loudspeaker that we're going to do all this." It's like Watergate on blast, every single day. And there's part of him that clearly just no longer cares whether the public is behind him. So, I mean, people, are constantly talking about, well, what about the public opinion polls showing him underwater? Well, I have this instinct that he sits in the Oval Office with, that weird homunculus, Stephen Miller. And the only question he really asks is not, am I underwater naturally? Says, is the base still with me? Can I get away with this? Am I going to be able to do this? And plus, right now, he has the power and he doesn't care whether the public likes it or not, which makes him incredibly dangerous. But it also means that he's not out there winning converts. He's not out there persuading Americans. He's not out there trying to make the shittiest things he's doing look better than him. Now, he's got a vast, media ecosystem that will polish any turd in the world. And I'm sorry for the use of language, but I mean, this is a huge asset. Richard Nixon never had that, no matter what he does.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw he gave that embarrassing speech to the UN. I mean, it was a farce. He has a fit about an escalator, and yet you turn on Fox News and like, Daddy's home, and this is really great. Are you kidding me? The North Koreans are embarrassed watching this.
This is really important, Charlie. And you and I have kind of talked about this a bit on television, and I think especially our friends at MSNBC missed this, right? He's playing a different game. He's not playing like re-election. He's playing consolidate power every single day, right? I control the entire military, right? I control the economy. I control everything. And every day is not about winning elections. It's about consolidating so much power where elections don't matter anymore. And that's where the Democrats are always behind the net, but they lose the plot. Like, well, we're going to fight them on the midterms. Do a lot of Democrats really have confidence that they're going to win in the midterms, right? Or that where are we going to be by the midterms, right? This like holdout hope that the Democrats can fail spectacularly in another generationally important election. That's what we're hoping. The people who brought you Kamala Harris are going to win the midterms. Like, I think we have to bring it back to always recognizing that what he's trying to do is consolidate power and try to block those consolidations of power in any way you can, in the courts, in the budgets, in the narratives. Slow him down, distract him as you try to work toward a midterm and hopefully, something sooner. Impeachment is a great example. For all the Democrats who are talking so big, where are the Democrats who are filing articles of impeachment? Not one? None of them? Right? Well, are they really using everything they have?
Here's a larger theme that I think we're getting at here is that they're playing completely different games. They're in completely different narratives. Now, sometimes I say, it's like, which movie are you in? Are you in, a comedy, or are you in a tragedy, or are you in an historical drama? Are you in a horror show, or even a better one? I mean, I have this image that basically here we have the Trumpian Thunderdome, and here come the Democrats all dressed up for the lacrosse match. It's like, no, this is not what we are playing.
The Democrats are all waiting for the next showing of the movie, and Trump's on Netflix ordering it on demand. Like, it's an entirely different landscape now, right? And I think I keep coming back to this. Like, what I would be focused on if I was a Democrat, defectors. Like, who can you get internally to turn on Trump from within the first cabinet secretary who goes out? Right? That person, and Hegseth was an insight into that. Hegseth's former lieutenants who turned on him and started to leak. Hegseth had times when he was on the ropes, right? Like, those insiders turning on Trump, Republicans who are willing to cross the Rubicon. That's a good use of your time to focus on those people who can hit him from inside and start to erode at him at his core. So, I think it's really, really important, Charlie, that people always focus most of all on national security, because there's so much coming at you. Right? That they just kind of forgot, he hit boats off Venezuela. He hit Iran. He's hit multiple countries just in the first 9 months with no congressional approval, no funding authorizations, not even a consult. So he's saying, not only can I bomb Iran, I can invade Portland, and this is what I say to Congress. Right? So I think that is really the question for the Democrats and for Republicans every day should be, what are you doing to stop him? Whatever the thing is, he's going to bring all the generals to D.C. What are you going to do to stop him? What is your strategy?
What could they do? But okay, I get the criticism, but what could you do to stop him from bringing the generals? I mean, you want them to have a message. I get that. But given the way the system is structured, particularly with the way the courts have been giving him,
let me give you an example to your question. What can they actually
do?
To give you a question, Tammy Duckworth, who is an amputee, a Democrat from Illinois, She's demanding answers, right? This is not the greatest thing, but she's saying she wants to know about the cost. She wants to know the reason. She's filed, a letter to Pete Hegseth. She's trying to get other folks on board. It would be nice to have Republicans to join that, right? But at least she's trying to demand answers. She's trying to look under the hood. She's focused on this and not just taking it as a mulligan and saying, okay, Trump's just going to do it and I'm going to let him. I think, especially when it comes to national security, you have to fight for every inch, especially when it comes to consolidations of power. And there's the political fight, but there's also the narrative fight. And you have to find retired generals who say this is wrong. Maybe you negotiate a counter event where other generals are somewhere else, right? Retired generals who can be around to offer insight. But it's just a real lack of creativity. And you and I have talked about this a lot. There's a total failure of imagination in how to deal with him. And it seems to be compounding itself. I mean, I could spitball ideas with you all day long, but the reality is the Democrats' job to come up with alternative strategies. And it's part of why I think they're the failocrats. And people should declare their independence from both parties, exercise your personal power. Don't give any party your name and your allegiance and your money, and demand change.
I mean, I would like to think that they will use the shutdown in a way to do what you're describing, fight every single inch. Unfortunately, I actually was doing a Google search on things that I've written in the past under the title, political malpractice. And boy, a lot of them came up, and they had a lot to do with Schumer. And the problem with Chuck Schumer is, talk about the wrong man for the wrong moment. There are certain times, and I think this has been one of the problems. And I think Democrats need to get their heads around the fact that if they say and they believe, and I think they do believe, that this is an existential threat, they start behaving like it. Stop.
Well, and even more importantly, Charlie, this is the one we got to put in. Pick different leaders, right? Yeah. Like Chuck Schumer is going to defend the shutdown. You know what Trump did? Trump put Dana White on 60 Minutes to talk about how he's going to have a UFC fight. So you got Dana White. This is literally what it is for Americans now. Dana White versus Chuck Schumer. Okay, who is going to win that narrative? Who's going to fight for your attention? Because we're in an attention economy, right? And if Chuck Schumer was a show, he would have been canceled 20 years ago. And Dana White is packing auditoriums around the world. So they have to understand they need the showmanship. They need the content. I'll go back to somebody like Wes Moore. I use him as an example.
Yeah.
Governor Wes Moore is dynamic. He can catch balls from Lamar Jackson. He can go out into rural areas. He can play the game. He can go on Joe Rogan. He can go on Jimmy Fallon. He can crack crabs and drink beers. Like, you need more of these multi-sport athletes like Wes Moore, who you can legitimately put up against Joe Rogan. You can put up against Dana White. Charlie Kirk was on that landscape, right? Everybody says to me, who is the liberal version of Charlie Kirk? There isn't one. The Democrats don't really have Ezra Klein. Like, what do they have that's close to Charlie Kirk? Really? Right? Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. They're bringing.
So part of it is
knife fight.
So let's actually, close the circle here where we actually started, because one of the things that you're doing is you are actively recruiting veterans and the kinds of role models that you're talking about to run for public office. We need a whole new generation of leaders that come from a different thing, instead of necessarily just going to Ivy League law schools, and McKinsey consulting firms for people. You're looking at other folks. So give me a sense. What is happening? Are you having success in getting people like you are describing to say, okay, I'm willing to jump into the cesspool of American politics and put myself on the line? Because it's a tough sell now, isn't it?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Patriotic Americans are answering the call to serve. We started Independent Veterans of America last year on July 4th. We endorsed 11 candidates and 4 won. Right. And there were little races like mayor of Ridgecrest, California. OK, but it was also big races like Dan Osborne, who almost won in Nebraska. It came close, but what a good fight. Right. Now, this year, we expect to have at least 25 candidates running as independents, not as Democrats or Republicans, as unaffiliated veterans who are putting country first, putting people over party, a very populist message. Right, fighting basically everybody who's screwing America from a very pure, unadulterated place, from U.S. Senate all the way down to school board. We've got already 4 candidates for U.S. Senate. In Idaho, South Dakota, Nebraska, Mississippi, there's a guy named Ty Pickens who just declared as an independent in Mississippi. I think we'll have half a dozen governors, and we'll have many members of Congress, many mayors, but we're offering an alternative, right? And we're also, bluntly, offering candidates who can win where Democrats and Republicans can't.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, because I mean, the states you just listed, no Democrat is going to win in any of those states. So
that's right.
You're basically trying to, square the circle here. Okay, so if you cannot beat MAGA Republicans with a Democrat, let's try something different.
Yeah, I mean, let's use Todd Achilles is running in Idaho. Okay, Todd Achilles ran as a Democrat last time, and now he's running as an independent because he's realized in his state the Democratic brand is poison. Okay, and he saw like a 20-point swing just by dropping his affiliation with the Democratic Party. That may make Democrats' heads explode, but the reality is their brand sucks, especially in purple states and especially in red states. And by just merely dropping that name, we see an increase. And the same is true for Democrats in some places. If someone like Jared Golden, Republicans in some states, someone like Don Bacon, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Don Bacon is a pretty viable candidate, but when he's a Republican, Adam Kinzinger. Let's think of all the Republicans that are kind of Republicans still, and they refuse to shed that affiliation.
Right.
It's dragging them down. But more importantly, these are leaders who can unify people, leaders who aren't indebted to parties, leaders who understand national security. Most of them are first-time, honestly, in a very candid way, like Democrats try to do when they grow beards and go on podcasts. And we think it's the future of politics for one really important reason, Charlie. 60% of young people are unaffiliated. They are not Democrats and Republicans. The future of American politics is politically unaffiliated. They want leaders that they like, leaders that they trust, and leaders with integrity. And that's what we're recruiting for. So if you're running, you want to run, check us out. We're looking for you. IndependentVeteransAmerica.org.
Okay, so one key point here, though, is that, and I think the skepticism about independence is, are you going to end up being a spoiler? Would you, allow Republicans to win because you're splitting the vote? Listening to you, you are recruiting these independents in places where Democrats weren't going to win anyway. These are not spoiler.
We're recruiting independents. Important. We're recruiting independents everywhere. Okay? We have people win in California, people run in Nebraska, run in North Carolina. We are executing a 50-state strategy. We want independents in the Senate who can form an independent caucus. We want independents in Congress that can function as a fulcrum. We've already got independent mayors like Yemi Mobilati in Colorado Springs, Tim Kelly in Chattanooga, who are focused on getting shit done for people, and they are agnostic of the parties. And I think the mayors is really where it's exciting, because we see, especially at the municipal level, people want independent politicians who can make the trains run, who can fix the potholes, who can pick up the garbage, and who can stop everybody from trying to kill each other, right? Like very basic stuff. And
that's people really think about local government completely differently, don't they? I mean, people actually do think about government as entities that get stuff done, as opposed to this weird notion that we have is that somehow the federal government is just a series of memes.
Well, and the local level is very important, Charlie. How comfortable are people with Republicans and Democrats on your school board? Yeah. And there are some elected school board positions, like the equivalent of school board positions. They should be, in my view, politically unaffiliated. That's exactly where you want nonpartisan people on a school board, at a mayor, right, in your county level. And the country is hungry for it, Charlie. And what we have to do is provide enough support for them to be protected, for them to be supported, and for them to be viable. And I think we're gonna shock some people in the next few years. 2026 is wide open. There's an opportunity for independents for governor, for Senate, and for a lot of spots in the House, and many mayors. That when I come back and talk to you, in 2027, I think it's going to be very different.
Well, Lord knows we need new ideas. We need to throw this out there. So I appreciate it. Paul Rieckhoff, thank you so much for joining me again. I appreciate it very much, all your time.
I appreciate it. I hope next time we can talk about baseball. Until then, go Yanks.
Go Brewers. Milwaukee Brewers.
I'm rooting for the Brewers. America should root for the Brewers.
Look, the Milwaukee Brewers are America's team. What can I say? And thank you all for listening to today's episode of To the Contrary podcast. I'm Charlie Sykes. You know why we do this. You know why we have conversations like this, because now more than ever, And probably for the foreseeable future, we have to constantly remind ourselves that we are not the crazy ones. Thank you.